Good evening. Welcome to the August 24th Education and Pupil Services and Finance and Operations Committee meetings. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As permitted by the Board Section 520.1 resolution, and due to the circumstances giving rise to that resolution, the Board is holding this advertised public meeting virtually. The procedures for the virtual meeting are more fully detailed in the Upper Darby School District School Board COVID-19 Special Operating Procedures and includes those for public participation. Dr. McGarry, will you please outline the public participation procedures?
Yes, Board President Brown, and thank you for everybody who's joining us live this evening. Moving into September, we will be holding in-person board meetings. Hopefully, we'll move in that direction with limited capacity in our buildings, given the substantial range that we're in right now with COVID spread. But we'll also be live streaming, continuing live streaming to allow for participation. Either way, the board is very eager and anxious to make sure we continue to have participation from our public before they make any decisions. Tonight is a committee meeting, and the participation goes like this. You could send in a phone in a comment or a question at 610-789-7200. Again, 610-789-7200, extension 2000. Please provide your name, your address, and the specific agenda item you'd like to comment or question on this evening. And the board will definitely take that into consideration before moving forward and moving potentially agenda items on to the next voting meeting. There are two meetings this evening. One is Finance and Operations, and the other one is Education and Pupil Services. You can also send an email in to committee questions, that's plural, committee questions at upperdarbysd.org. Same process as you would follow when you phone in a comment or a question. You can leave your name, address, and it's very important that you leave the specific agenda item you'd like to comment on or question this evening. We will read that into the record, and the administration will do their best, and the board will do their best to answer any questions that we are able to this evening. Board President Brown, if you need me to follow up on any of this as we move forward, I'll be happy to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McGarry. Please revisit that at your discretion as the night progresses. The meeting of the Education and Pupil Services Committee will please come to order. Roll call, Board Secretary Mr. Rogers, please.
Dr. Haig,
Present.
Mr. Desnoyers,
Sorry about that. I am present and can hear the proceedings.
Mr. Warsavage,
I am present and can hear the proceedings.
Mr. Neal. Present. Ms. Williams,
Present.
Mr. Fields. Present. Mrs. Mitchell,
Present.
Mrs. Curry, Mr. Brown.
Present. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. In order to allow this meeting to continue virtually and as permitted by Policy 003, I move to suspend portions of the following policies. From Policy 006, I move to suspend language in the section titled Public Participation to remove the words present at a board meeting and thereby allow members of the public to participate through the other means we have provided. In Policy 006.1, I move to suspend the language a majority of board members shall be physically present at a board meeting when a board member attends through electronic communications. This will allow as many board members as necessary to participate remotely. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say I oppose and state your name for the record. Anyone abstaining, please say I abstain and state your name for the record. The motion carries. I will now turn over the Education and Pupil Services Committee agenda to co-chair Mrs. Mitchell.
Thank you, President Brown. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Education and Pupil Services Committee meeting. We just have one agenda item this evening, and it is on our Summer Academy program highlights from 2021. And Ms. Kelly, would you proceed with the presentation? Oh, Mr. Marshallak, would you please proceed with the presentation?
It's okay. We're going to turn it right over to Ms. Kelly anyway. So she'll be leading the one agenda item this evening, and she'll do a review of our district summer programming. Ms. Kelly?
Great.
Good evening, everyone.
So tonight, I'd like to spend a few minutes just reviewing our Summer Academy program that we were able to run this school year. We were able to engage about 1,000 students, approximately 1,000 students in some summer learning activities. And I want to just address or just review with you some of the highlights of these programs. So this is just one example of the many quotes that we've gotten or responses that we've gotten either from teachers, the parents, students themselves that reached out and said what a wonderful experience they did have. I would be remiss if I did not give thanks and kudos to the district supervisors who did an enormous amount of work in planning for this, as well as our EL coordinator, Eileen Caruso, the supervisors for special ed who did a ton of planning to have these programs up and running for this school year. So a tremendous amount of thanks and hard work that went into this program is due to their efforts. So the agenda for tonight is I will review some of the program highlights and what we were able to accomplish. I will show you some of the photos that we were able to capture during the summer months, and then just talk about some next steps as we hope to continue these programs moving forward into other summers. So in the past, we were able to run a summer school program for our K-3 students, or entering first, entering second, and entering third. We always have done a middle school program as well, and we always have done some high school programs. This year, however, we were able to expand all of those programs, and we're able to engage many more students in the opportunities. So we offered a program for entering kindergarten, which was new for us. Usually we focused on our entering first, entering second. So we were able to capture some of our entering kindergarten students, which was a tremendous benefit to get them acclimated into the school, get them ready to learn, and be prepared to what they were ready to enter into now in August next week. That was called our ramp-up program. We were also able to do some enrichment activities with our 1st through 5th grade students. And then our middle school program, what we focused on this year was really ramping up. What were they expecting to see in their next years of school? So not focusing on what they did not learn, but what would get them into the school mode again, and what would get them ready to learn in their next grade level. So that was our focus in the middle schools. They participated in academics as well as elective areas. And then our high school program, we were able to do two things this year. We concentrated on our 8th into 9th grade students, got them into the building, into the high school, got them learning the building. And then we were also able to concentrate on our 9th through 12th graders, where we have to focus on that credit recovery program, who was maybe not successful or as successful as they could be in that online environment, and were able to recover their credits now in a more formal setting or a more traditional setting. So that was our focus, or that was our overview of the program. In our elementary summer academy, we engaged over 500 students, closer to 560 students here. They participated in phonemic awareness and phonics, fluency, comprehension, and math. You'll see we tried to make things fun, because the last thing a student wants to do is go to summer school. So we really tried to flip that mentality and say, it's a summer academy, we are going to have some fun activities. So you'll see the students on our left that are writing or in shaving cream on the desks. We engage them in as many fun activities as we can. Probably one of the most fun that the students responded to was the writing activities that they like to participate in. And that was our virtual enrichment activities. So we were also able to engage other students in virtual learning activities throughout the summer as well. They participated in a writing workshop. This was over 150 students that did sign up. They did a book study on the Lemonade War. They did lots of writing. They did author celebration day. So they really engaged in those learning opportunities, and the students that's where we got a ton of feedback that said it was such a pleasure to be in the schools doing those fun activities. The teachers even said it was nice to engage with the students in a different way. Some of the parent feedback that we have is up on the board. I'm not going to read every one to you, but you have an idea of just the idea of preparing for the next grade level, the confidence that was built up in our students, as they were mentally preparing for that transition. We heard from parents that that was a great help. And it was just an amazing experience, and you see that in some of the quotes that were left up on the board. Our EL summer program, we had elementary and secondary students involved. Our elementary program serviced over 100 students. They attended both Highland Park and Stonehurst, and our secondary students were here at the high school. Our high school had many students this year during the summer. All of our secondary students were here because of the construction projects that were happening at Beverly Hills. So this building was up and running almost the entire summer with students from our EL program as well as our middle school, our general ed population for middle school as well. We also had some special ed students here at the high school. So this building had many students, and there was a lot going on in this building throughout the whole summer. Here, the focus for the EL program is varied by grade and varied by proficiency levels. So they're concentrating on speaking, listening, and writing, phonemic awareness and grammar and math based on grade level, as well as the proficiency level based on data. All of the students that we serviced this year, they were based on data, except for our students entering K and 1, where we invited every single student to come join us. We reviewed that back in, I believe, February here at a committee meeting, but just to reiterate that. So we tried to keep as many seats open as we could, but we also had to balance it with how many teachers wanted to service our students over the summer. As we move forward, the extended school year, or ESY, was for our special education students. About 551 students participated. And the concentration for special ed is on IEP goal maintenance, as well as goals in reading, writing, math, speech, OT, and PT, as well as all of the other things listed here. The teachers were provided all the instructional materials that they needed, and they continued to monitor and track the progress over the summer and continue to communicate with those parents throughout the summer so they would know what their students were learning. Next, part of our elementary program was our high-energy, hands-on camp innovation. This was new to our school district. It was the first time that we were able to run something like this. And we had over 40 students at Garriford and Stonehurst who had 2 weeks of STEM activities, of building things, trying out things, taking things apart and putting them back together. So it was it was fun 2 weeks for these students. The seats were limited here due to the number of people that the camp itself could hold and the materials that we were able to get. We also had Upper Darby National Honor Society students helping with the younger kids as they were in these STEM activities. So through the weeks, the first week they built solar bugs. They also did some reverse engineered microphones to learn how they worked. They taking things apart. The excitement on their little faces was great. The other thing was they designed some catapults that they used to launch some rubber ducks across the room, and who doesn't love to throw something across the room, especially little kids, so they had a blast doing this. But the activities really reinforced the science and math as well as nonfiction reading throughout this whole program. Again, it was a 2-week program. We had about 40 students that were able to participate. Our own teachers were doing the program. However, our Camp Innovation came in and trained our teachers. We bought the materials with them, and then they taught us how to do the program.
Excellent.
Middle school. So again, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students entering 6th, entering 7th, and entering 8th grade students. These are our numbers for students that were able to come in. And during the summer, we did see some fluctuating weeks, which we always see whenever we run a summer program. So we saw some weeks everybody was there, and then some weeks not everybody was there. But we often got emails from parents saying, you know, we were going on vacation. Is it okay if we miss? And we totally accepted that and knew that that was going to happen. So our numbers, this is how many students enrolled, but each week it did fluctuate just a little bit. The focus for the middle school, like I mentioned before, was really on ELA and reading, and then math. but also each of the students were able to participate in one of the elective areas, and we did it based on some interest. So we collected some interest surveys from the students as well as their parents, and then we tried to roster them the best that we could based on teacher availability and everything else. So we did some hands-on science, some historical and current events, engineering, but it was all based on the teachers that we had here in our that were able to come in and actually support and help us. The reason that we concentrate on the academic areas of ELA and reading and math was because we didn't have a ton of science teachers that were able to provide time for us, so we couldn't build a traditional schedule of ELA, math, science, and reading, or science and social studies, but we did try to give them activities that would support that learning in other ways. Moving on, that 8th grade into 9th grade situation or experience that they had, there was 120 students that were here. They did concentrate on math, ELA, and social studies. Again, that science area was the one area that we struggled to get the number of teachers to really support that learning. We did try to incorporate as much science into that math content as we could, and just kept building up their experiences in the classroom. So the 8th grade into 9th grade students focused on those 3 areas, really. Last was our high school credit recovery classes. You'll see that based on the high school need, we had some students that needed 1 class, we had some students that needed 2 classes, and then we also had some students that needed 3. We also kept our eye on those students that needed 1 or more classes to just graduate, and we had a 74% success rate there for our students coming in. But you'll see that many of the students were able to gain back some of their credits so that they were more successful coming into the 21-22 school year. Also, in addition to the high school students that needed credits, we were able to run some clubs. And these clubs ran virtually, and our teachers used their Google Meets to meet with the students for about 6 weeks, not necessarily consecutive weeks, but we're able to start at the end of June throughout the beginning of August and meet with their club to keep those things going and the work that they do as a club. So all of those clubs were able to run during the summer as well with our club sponsors and leaders. Some additional summer things that we were able to do this year. So we had the morning with the king of math. So Rob had some mornings that he shined. Nearly 75 students participated. He did them in grade bands, so was able to engage them in some fun learning activities for math. We also had some community reads. So we did the one and only Ivan. I know many people in this room engaged in some way and read. My daughter and I read many nights. So each Monday night, Kristen O'Neill would have a kickoff of the one and only Ivan. And then the many people up here would start to read and trade off, and the students were engaged. We had about 10 students that every week they were there. They didn't miss a beat. And then we had some that popped in and popped out, but they were reading along, many of them. They loved it. They want to read the next book in the series and asked if we could get it for them. So I'm working on getting them the next book about Bob. And then the last thing that we were able to do this year was the community read for the secondary students, and we read I Will Always Write Back, where we had, again, about a solid 10 students that were able to participate and read along. Well, theirs looked a little bit different. They read first, and then they had a book discussion, and Kathy Kenya ran that one for us. So just some future plans. So what we would like to see happen is, what we would like to see happen is with the help of the ESSER funds that we are receiving. So all of this funding happened through the ESSER 2 funds that we had. As we move into the ESSER 3 funds, we're hoping to continue and sustain and grow these programs for the next 2 to 3 summers. So our plan is to keep them going and to make them better and better each year, engage more families and students. The feedback that we received from parents was sometimes the times didn't work out for them and what we could do to adjust times, as well as the days of the week. They want to see 5 days a week, not just 3. So things like that. So things that we have to work on, but we did collect feedback from parents, students, as well as our teachers as we start to move forward. So the salaries, right now, the cost for just running this program was about $800,000. To run a robust program where we're engaging probably about 1,000 students and paying our teachers to run the program cost about that for this school year. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Sounds great. I'm sure the kids that engaged had a great time and are going to be ready for the start of the school year. Are there any questions or comments from board members? Mr. Brown?
Thank you. First, I was impressed with the depth and the breadth of the offering. It seems like it was very comprehensive, and anything that students would be interested in seems like it was offered. On the first slide, I think you stated that the middle school was ramp up only, and I know that it was enrichment for one of the other groups. So if you can go back to that slide, I'm going to make sure I'm asking the right thing. Right. So enrichment was for the elementary students. The question is, are there plans to offer enrichment for the middle school students in the future with the program?
So we would like to, so part of the ramp-up program for the middle school students was those electives.
Okay.
So in elementary school, you don't have the electives. So they were the enrichment program. In the ramp-up program, we were able to run those electives that
Okay.
students were able to choose. So we hope to expand the amount of electives that we would have running. It's just sometimes that's based on the teacher interest and feedback at that point. So we were able to run a few of those electives that they would get as their enrichment period. We just separated it out differently because elementary students usually don't get those elective areas.
Understood. That's why when I looked at that list of electives, it looks like it was enrichment
Yes,
related courses. So
exactly.
thank you for that. Okay.
Are there any other comments or questions from board members? Go
So-
ahead, Dr. Haig.
So just to clarify, you're saying it's a semantic difference that
Correct.
just,
Yeah.
there were similar programs and both. I just wanted to say thank you also. It was, we had so much fun. My daughter absolutely loved the one and only Ivan, and it just really is, I mean, I echo what President Brown said. It's really an impressive breadth of topics, and I'm excited that we're going to be able to do this, and thank you so much to you and your whole team, because I think it was a really great summer.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from anyone online? Ms. Buford?
Dr. McGarry would like to comment.
Okay, go ahead, Dr. McGarry.
I just want to say, we obviously passed a new comprehensive plan. Previous iteration of the comprehensive plan, one of the goals that we had established, and we just struggled to ever get there, was this idea of a community read. And so I want to say thank you to you and to the team to be able to pull that off, and I hope we continue this as a tradition. I know the turnout wasn't what we had hoped originally, but I think with more people buying into it and seeing the fun that we can have with it, I think it's going to be great. And I want to say to Kristen O'Neill, who's obviously we got her in the totally the right spot. She's embraced this opportunity and to promote reading in the district. And to Christine, to you, I think people forget how exhausting last year is, and to the teachers that were involved, the fact that we really haven't stopped. Where others maybe took a break, there wasn't a break. And so I want to say thank you to you and to the team and the supervisors. Just the amount of effort that goes into running this district and getting to where we are. Thank you for what you guys have done. And to Mr. Brown, Board President Brown's comment, and Dr. Haig's, there are enrichment activities that were occurring in those elective offerings that we had those students that were coming in for that support to continue that motivation. And third final point is, Aranda and I think it was yesterday, the day before, I forget, Aranda, we've been interviewed so frequently, but we had a news reporter here in the high school yesterday, I think, or the day before, talking about fair funding. And when you talk about the dollar amount for just 1,000 students, when you put into context that kids deserve this all of the time, and it's about $800,000, my heart breaks when I think about the fact that this funding, without it continuing in our schools, what's going to happen 2 years from now when we no longer have that funding, and these kids need this extension of the school year and these activities to help them and engage them. And so we need to really continue to push for fair funding in our schools. Our teachers deserve it, and more importantly, the kids and the experiences that they have. So do Board President Brown's comments that there can be enrichment opportunities for all kids above and beyond. And we won't be limited to just 1,000 kids who want it. It'd be wonderful one day to have 50% of our kids engage in some enrichment activity over the summer. But I just want to say thank you to the team and to you for making it happen.
Thank you. Yeah, it seemed amazing, so I'm sure there was a lot of planning that went into it, and thank you. Hope you get a little bit of a break, maybe at some point, maybe over Christmas or something. Okay. Are there any other comments from board members? Okay, seeing none, I think we're at the point where we can take public comments now. Are there any public comments on the Education and Pupil Services agenda? Ms. Buford?
There are no comments on the Education and Pupil Services Committee
Okay.
meeting.
Thank you so much. So this agenda item was just purely informational, so there's no action to be taken tonight. So I'm going to turn it back over to you to adjourn the meeting.
You want to have them review? Oh, there's nothing to
There's
review.
nothing to review.
Skip one step. Okay. A motion is in order for the adjournment of the Education and Pupil Services Committee meeting.
So moved.
All right. Thank you. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, Ms. Mitchell, for running that meeting. I think we'll jump right into finance and operations. I don't think we need a break this time, so we'll probably need a few minutes for you guys to switch seats and things like that, or not really? Okay. Okay, looks like we're ready. Marvin and Craig, Batman and Robin's ready. The meeting of the Finance and Operations will please come to order. I will now turn over the Finance and Operations Committee meeting to my co-chair, Mr. Fields.
Thank you, Board President Brown. Mr. Rogers, and I'm assuming Mr. Marvin, please begin with an overview of your agenda items for this evening. Sure. Tonight we have two agenda items. The first up is the Safe Routes to School Initiative update, which is referred to on here as SRTS. This is informational. Mr. Lee will present the findings of the Safe Routes to School initiative and discuss how we're going to move forward with this program. The second item would be policies, which will be board action, the policies from this month's board meeting going through a first reading. Policy 003, functions, policy 005, organization, 006, meetings, 006.1, attendance at meetings via electronic communications, and 903, public participation in board meetings. If you don't mind, we'll jump right into agenda item number one. Please do. All right. At this time, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Marvin Lee to present the Safe Routes to School initiative.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Good evening, everybody. My name is Marvin Lee. I'm the controller of operations for the DARBY School District, and I will be giving you some updates on the Safe Route to School project that we completed. I get the opportunity to present tonight, but most of the work was completed by Forest Tower, transportation teams, and CH planning team, so all the credit goes to those individuals. So why did we do this? Safe Route to School is a national and international movement to create safe, convenient, and healthy opportunities for children to walk and bicycle to school, as there are many benefits. The benefits include, increases childhood activity and improve health, and it reduces air pollution, and it relieves traffic in our environment. DARBY School District had three very specific objectives though. Number one was obviously we wanted to create a safe walking routes, and we wanted to recommend that to our parents. We wanted to also optimize the 80 crossing guard location in our neighborhoods. We reviewed more than 200 location intersections to recommend, and we came up with the recommendations. Number three is very important. We wanted to also provide a clear guidelines between the walk zone and the bus zone in all our public schools, because we get a lot of questions from our parents about that. The school board approved the project and the contract with the CH Planning in May of 2021. Not all schools are participating in this project because 100% of the students attending K-Center, St. Cal, and Charles Kelly are bused. So out of total 14 schools, we have 11 schools that participated in this project. For us to get a basic understanding of the safety of the road, we had to obtain a lot of data points. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but we obviously had to understand the catchment and boundaries, current crossing out locations, student locations, crime data, sex offender data, traffic control devices, speed limits, traffic stops, crosswalks. We had to get a lot of data. So some of the information were available internally, but we had to gather information from external sources. Thanks to those organizations and departments, for example, like police department, township, and the county, that made those information available to us. I forgot PennDOT as well. Thank you for making those information available to us. Not only getting the data for the base framework, we also had to talk to a lot of people. We talked to experts in our school security team and also transportation team, and our school principal as the expert because they know the area around the school. We also got community input. We sent an inquiry survey to our parents through Parent Link. We received more than 400 responses from our parents district-wide. We also talked to principal because they are also community members of our schools. Getting the data and talking to people was not enough. We also went out to the street and walked the street. We spent many days, several days, many hours on the street, actually walking the recommended routes. We also engaged with the community members on the street. When they were out on the street, they were reviewing the sidewalk conditions, sign conditions, traffic light conditions, parking, loading, and unloading conditions before they make any recommendations. So we got data, we talked to people, we were out on the street. We incorporate those three components to make a recommendation. We also used the Safe Route to School walking route resources nationally available and best practices, and Safe Route to School crossing guide guidelines and best practices. And also we used the expertise and experience from CH planning team to make a recommendation on 80 crossing guard locations and also safe walking routes. Finally, before we make anything final, we also talk to our principals and experts one more time to make sure that we're making sound recommendations. It is very important to note that there's no absolute safest route to school. The recommended routes are suggested compared to the conditions of other routes. We're giving you routes that are safer than other routes. It's not the most, there's no absolute safest route. We also recommend parents and students to use this map to explore options for commuting between home and school and for choosing the most appropriate commuting options based on their knowledge, road conditions, and specific needs for their children. So I will give you quick information. So I don't expect you to be able to read this. I'm not giving you that. I just wanted to let you know the job is completed, and also the maps will be available on our website, but I will go through one of the maps. So each school will have one-page documentation. Each map has front and back. In the front of the map, you will be able to see the school location. You will be able to see the recommended walking routes that's represented in blue here. And also if you see black and yellow triangle, that represent the crossing guard location around your school. And also we have a crossing traffic lights, and we also have an estimated walking time between your neighborhood to school. We used 5 minutes per quarter mile to calculate that information. If you go to the back of the map, you will be able to see walk zone and bus zone. So the information in light green means that you're in the walking zone. In light orange area, you'll be able to see that's the bus zone. That's the Beverly Hills Middle School. So we have a small pocket of students that are getting bused from Beverly Hills Middle School. Just for your information, the eligibility for elementary school is 1 mile, 1.5 miles for middle school, and 2 miles for high school. What's next? So we will be communicating this information to our parents and school through various modes. We're going to be obviously making this available on our website. We will be sending this information to our parents repeatedly so they can understand, they can see the recommended walking routes. And we will continuously update and enhance the map based on the comments, concerns and suggestions that we receive from the parents and schools and community members. It's not one time get it done and done with kind of project. We will be continuously making updates to the map to make it safe for our students. And the number 3 was actually the recommendation from Ms. Curry, the Vice President of the board. So she recommended that we come up with the transportation safety team. So actually yesterday we had a transportation welcome meeting. I announced the transportation safety team to the bus drivers and attendants. And we will be visiting our schools to teach our students how to be safe on the street and in and around vehicles. So we will be going around and tell you how to cross the walk, how to get on and off the bus, those kind of information. And we will be continue collaborating with partnership organization in the region. For example, the Upper Darby Township has a bike study going on. We have also county has a bike study going on. So we will be working with those people to make our streets safer for our students. That is all I have for tonight, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. I'll open up for comments from the board in the room, if there are any.
So, Mr. Lee, a few parents, have reached out to me regarding the transportation issue, and in both cases, their children that were previously on buses are no longer on buses. So, obviously, from a parent's perspective, that's disappointing and frustrating. And I just want to try to get a better feel for, what we're doing to engage them to try to alleviate their concerns, because at least in those cases they talked about the inconvenience of it, because previously they've been able to put their kids on a bus in the morning and go to work and things like that, and now they have to make arrangements to not, since they don't have that as an option. They also mentioned like the safety of it, because if their kid now has to walk a distance to school, and if they're in middle school, they maturity levels vary. It may be a safety issue involved with that kid walking to school. And they talked about if they, at least in one case, the kid is going into 8th grade. So they caught the bus for 2 years and now they have to walk. So they mentioned the fact or the possibility of, can we grandfather them so that they can finish the way they started, and then we can implement this, at least for next year, for those people who are just starting, maybe going to Beverly Hills or Drexel Hill, whatever the case may be. Then they're doing the same thing all 3 years and not having it change midstream on them. So just trying to get your thoughts on those variables.
Yeah, one of the hardest things to do in transportation department is to say no to parents, because we completely understand their frustration, their inconvenience. We understand that, but this project of actually following the guidelines in the school district started maybe about 2 years ago. It was not something that we started this summer to get rid of the buses. It was not. It was something that we started working on it about 2 years ago. We've been working very closely with PennDOT to understand what is hazardous, what is not hazardous. Based on the information from PennDOT, Upper Darby School District really does not have any hazardous street on our school district.
Doesn't have what? I'm sorry.
Hazardous streets.
Hazardous. I'm
Yes.
sorry. Okay.
We have a lot of perceived hazardous street on our in our school district based on people's opinion, but we really don't have any. And also, when we are putting crossing guard on the street, it negates and nullifies a hazardous street as well. So we understand, and our team in transportation, they spend hours and hours every single day fielding those calls, and we understand. We try to be very nice, understandable. A lot of parents understand our position very well, and they accept. But we have some parents that, continuously very persistent with their request. But bottom line is we have to follow the board policy, which is 1 mile for the elementary, 1.5 for middle, and 2 miles for high school, unless they have a special conditions like IEP or 504 plan. So that is our official position in terms of ridership right now.
Okay. Thank you.
And just to add, the hazardous routes that Marvin alluded to, there's really only one way through the state for a intersection or a road to be considered hazardous, and it's through PennDOT. They have to do that determination based on their own code and policy statewide. So it's not that Upper Darby school district or the board or any transportation department is declaring a road hazardous. We have put in numerous requests over the past year or two now to PennDOT. They've come out and reviewed many of our streets, and that's where Marvin has alluded to not having any hazardous roads. We do have one or two intersections still under review right now, so there's a chance that maybe one comes back. When you look at the way they go through the determination process, we're not sure it's going to be likely, but again, we can't make the determination. PennDOT has to make that determination for the district based on their request.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Rhonda, you want to go through who has comments?
Sure. Our first comment is from LaFay Williams, located at, I'm sorry?
I didn't mean that. I mean that from the board.
Oh, from the
You
board
said
members,
all
I
on.
apologize.
Sorry.
Okay. So our next comment would be from Director Desnoyers and then Director Dr. Haig.
Thank you, Rhonda. And Mr. Lee, thank you for an excellent presentation. I just wanted to, I would like to ask, and I think it is great that the Safe Routes to School team went out into the neighborhood and walked the streets. When you mentioned that, you said the Safe Routes to School team took note of issues with sidewalks and signs and things like that. And I just wanted to confirm that there's a mechanism in this where those issues get reported to the appropriate authority, either the township or the or PennDOT, so they can be addressed.
So one of the deliverable of this contract with the CH Planning is to get documentation about how they came up with their recommendations. So all the information they gathered throughout this project will be obtained by the school district, and we will take that action to make sure that everybody knows about our concerns.
Thank you.
I guess it's my turn next, I guess. Okay, thanks. So first a comment and then some questions. So the comment is, and you sort of alluded to this, Mr. Lee, but I thought it would make sense to emphasize it, that it's not just a decision by the transportation department to be mean, it's a need to be consistent, and that there were certain neighborhoods in the district that were getting sort of extra busing and then other neighborhoods that weren't. And we believe it's very important to be consistent across the board. And I 100% know how frustrating this is because my block is on the dividing line. So this is hard. But I also wanted to ask about how the crossing guard locations were determined, because I know Westbrook, so I can pick up certain places and ask about certain intersections, but that's probably not the best use of our time. Maybe you could just say a little bit about if I look at certain intersections and think, gosh, I would have thought there'd be a crossing guard there. Can you say something about why there might not be a crossing guard, like crossing Baltimore Pike, for example?
The crossing guard location was based on multiple things, but the most important data point that we received was spending time with Mr. Tom Lee and Mark Manley, because they're the one who knows our street ins and out. They spent decades on the street, evaluating those kind of things. So we reviewed more than 200 crossing intersections to make the recommendation for 80 total combined total intersections. But the most important factor was the opinion from Mr. Nee and Mark Manley. And also we have to think about whenever we are making a recommendation for one new spot, we have to take one away from other neighborhood as well. So we made a choice very carefully because we didn't want to move too much things around. And our residents are also used to certain things. We didn't want to make too many changes to those as well. So that was a major consideration as well.
Okay. And so, for example, if there was a crossing guard at a bus stop and there's no marker here indicating that, are those crossing guards still there, or no, they're also gone?
So if you don't see it on the map, that means that it's not there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I had another question, which I'm not. Oh, so I'm excited to hear about the transportation. I forget what you called it, transportation safety team, or and I'm so glad that Ms. Curry suggested that. I'm hoping that we can, that can help sort of alleviate some of these concerns. I know that, I have twins, and so I happen to be just within the boundary if I was, or rather just outside of the boundary, but if I happen to be just within a couple, which is literally a couple of houses down, if I didn't have twins, I can't imagine sending one 6-year-old on that route. I mean, it really is a scary idea to me. So anything that we can do to sort of alleviate those concerns.
I mean, the second phase of the project, the CH planning was recommending, which I didn't really talk about tonight, was to come up with those kind of ideas. One of the things they always talk about is the walking train, so they can walk to the school together with an adult, some kind of fun way. So maybe in the future, I'm gonna come back with those recommendations to alleviate. To help out those kind of situations.
That sounds really great. Thank you.
I think Director Neal has a comment or question.
Thank you, Director Fields. Thank you, Mr. Lee, for your presentation. I'm a visual learner, so I do appreciate the maps. I love that kind of stuff. I'm excited for tomorrow when they're uploaded to the website, because I'll probably be in there playing with them. My question, it pertains to being visual. Do we have any plan to post signs at these intersections indicating it's a school district, crossing guard site or intersection? This is my vision for our district, is our crosswalks are purple and gold, where there's a crossing guard, but, obviously that's not feasible. But would there be like a simple, sort of like a bus sign that would indicate an intersection that would be supplied with a crossing guard from the district?
Some of the streets are managed by township, some of are PennDOT information. So whenever we are trying to put any kind of signs, we have to work with those organizations to put those signs. So that's one of the things that CH Planning was actually recommending to us, to make those kind of efforts, like a lobbying or like a talking and engaging with those kind of organizations. So it could be next phase of the project.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. I have a couple of questions and comments myself. So I just want to reiterate that we are looking for parental input on the maps. So there's still time to look at the maps and provide input, suggestions, help. I want to also restate that we're still in review, correct? We're not really finalized on these things just yet, right? And,
It's a continuing documentation. So when it makes sense, the comments are made and concerns are received. If it makes sense, we're going to make those changes on the map.
Right. Okay. And then I'm glad to hear about the transportation safety team. That makes a lot of sense. And I think you've spoken a couple times. I had another question about commitments from the township of the state, but you've already spoken to that a couple times, so I'll let that go. And I believe Dr. McGarry has a comment.
I just wanted to add some context to these discussions, because I received several phone calls. And just as a reminder, when you're working on a facilities plan, and we were discussing boundaries at that period of time, this board was put under tremendous pressure. So it's an interesting conversation for me. On one hand, we're getting scolded because we're going to have 8 or 9 buses now, or the rumors that were flying around, we were going to have 12 to 15 buses going to Iran and making, oh my gosh, what are you doing? And then it became, in Clifton Heights, there's going to be 22 buses coming to Clifton Heights. The reality is, all the things that we're trying to do is to reduce transportation and transportation costs. And the reality is the sustainability of transportation. If you go back over the summer, and you heard other local school districts, not to name them in our meeting, they were struggling to fill bus drivers. Previous to that, there were state legislators, we were a part of meetings, and they were looking to change the busing requirements as far as distance of providing transportation because of the cost, the shortage of bus drivers, and just the reality of it. Here in our school district, when this team took over, and we were looking at the Aronimink project, if you recall, and the Clifton Heights project, Marvin, thankfully, and Tim Lambert that we brought on board were looking at the software and the GIS that we had, and they started to understand and notice students were getting transportation to schools here that they shouldn't have been really technically, and other communities who were walking maybe somewhat longer distances, as you'll see in here, maybe some Stonehurst and Bywood students, were not getting any transportation to school. And so when we were looking at the reality of who would need transportation and who wouldn't, we started to recognize, and we released this information really 3 years ago when we were starting to talk about the Aronimink expansion and renovation and the Clifton Heights project. So this information came out publicly in several meetings at that time. What I've noticed, and I know that Board President Brown and many of you get phone calls, I've also noticed that some individuals have moved out of the community. Like, for example, there were some comments that came in or phone calls I've been a part of where they actually moved their students out of the school district. And at one time, they may have gotten transportation 2 years ago as a sixth grader, and maybe they're back. And now, at one time, there was a bus, but when we released this information to the public, things have changed. So many of these individuals would have been aware of this last year as we started to bring students back into school. But they were not in the school district at that time, and so they didn't get that information. One conversation I had today, which I respect, people make their educational decisions, withdrew their children from the school district, and now they brought them back, and it's this idea of grandfathering in. And so the question of grandfathering in becomes difficult because then it becomes for Marvin and Craig and Forrest, who gets grandfathered and who doesn't? What's the time frame? If you left the school district and you're now back in 8th grade, but you got it in 6th grade, what does that look like? You know, someone going from 5th to 6th grade might be a next door neighbor. Does the 8th grader get to go and the 6th grader doesn't? So it's extremely complicated when we start to look at what we're trying to do. For me, I try to go back to what our goals are as a district. We were looking at a facilities plan. We were trying to make safe walking paths to school. We were also looking at bike paths to school and reducing the amount of transportation and busing and congestion in the school district. I think this is, again, one of the first steps in that direction. What I've learned from this is we have to over-communicate everything we do. And that's what I've heard in some of the conversations that I was a part of today. I think, you know, Marvin and I are talking, and Craig, we need to push this out to the parochial schools. Even if they don't send our kids to our schools, this is what we've done. This is our safe paths in our community. And just keep communicating with them where we're going and why we're going in that direction. As far as context, because I know I've had conversations with some parents, I'm sure there'll be some comments tonight about safety, walking to and from school. And not to give a shameless plug up or Darby Rising, but this is the key part of this. We are a unique school district. We run crossing guards. Most school districts don't run their own crossing guards. They're run by the local police or the local townships. We have 3 different boroughs, and now this school district has taken on the responsibility of crossing guards for Clifton Heights. There was a period of time when the Clifton Heights crossing guard person was not around, and so Lou Gentile was trying to handle that. We have Millbourne that we're responsible for, and obviously Upper Darby. So in our community, we are handling all of the crossing guards, all of the expenses, all of the hiring, and all of the organizing of those crossing guards. I think that's really important for the public and the board to know that we are handling those responsibility areas. So much so that we have a safety meeting. So not just has Forrest and Marvin take an opportunity to have a safety meeting for walking to school, we have a safe schools team. On Monday of this week, in preparation for opening of schools, I met with our principals. We have representation from our elementary school principals, our middle school principals, our high school principal. Marvin was busy. He couldn't make the meeting because he's doing a lot of work, as you can see. But Dr. Manfrey joined me in the meeting. Ms. Buford joined me in the meeting. Ms. Figueroa Douglas joined me in the meeting. Chief of Police Tim Bernhardt joined me. Anthony Vaughn, who's one of his, we've working with the schools closely from the Upper Darby Police Department, was there. EMS representation, Chief Sawyer from the fire department was there, and we reviewed safe routes to school. We're going to turn this information over to the police. We had a meeting with a parent group just last week. One of the questions came up. They noticed there's some issues around the Wawa. There's some issues in the community. The board can't solve every community issue, but what Upper Darby Rising is meant to do, and what we're meant to do is, let's be a stakeholder and try to bring all the people together, the community together to solve some of these problems that we'll probably hear a little bit tonight. Tim Bernhardt, the chief of police, 100% on board. Chief Sawyer, awesome, 100% on board. Upper Darby Rising should help bring some of these conversations together and help communities solve some of these issues. It's going to be one step at a time, but let's stick to, again, what our goals have been as a school district and our board. Reduce the number of busing and transportation issues that we have. Try to create within reason walkable schools. And work toward those goals along the way, helping these parents and families get their children to and from school safely as a community, as an organization, and pass the baton to each other as we do that. And I want the parents that are listening tonight and the board to know that we're lucky and blessed that our chief of police is involved, our fire department is involved. We are going to invite Tim Bernhardt and Chief Sawyer to meetings with our staff, as we begin school, they're going to join us for coffee meetings. And the home and school meetings throughout the month of October, they have said that they'd like to participate and join me when I meet with all the home and schools through the month of October to talk about these issues. And if there's anything that comes up, they'll be there to join with us hand in glove as we implement these pathways to school to do that. If there is an opportunity to grandfather, as Board President Brown asked, or to work with families, that is something that we will certainly look at doing. It just becomes this issue, as Dr. Haig, you pointed out, which street, which kid, and which neighborhood. So if the family has an 8th grader and now there's a 6th grader coming in, does that grandfathering start again? It's this slippery slope, and you try to explain that. And by and large, almost all the people that we interact with are very on board and they understand it, but rightfully so. They're advocating for their children to have a safe way to school. And so that's another point that I want to make. That's our focus. How can we come together to make sure that kids have a safe way to school? Whether it's a bus or walking, that's our part in helping bring those stakeholders together to do that. So I just want to remind people that if they're listening tonight, we have to over-communicate and remind those folks that are calling. This is not just new. This started actually 3 years ago when we started those projects at Aronimink and Clifton Heights.
Thank you, Dr. McGarry. It's a tricky thing. There are people around the schools people that live there and lived there a long time, that their concern is too many buses at the schools. And so to meet that concern, we find ways to have fewer buses. And then there are people that are a mile or more away from those schools. That's who that affects. And so it's the community that has to figure out or come together or understand that one is pulling and one is pushing. And you can't have both in that scenario. You can't have both in that scenario. I know, I'd like to go to public comments for this now. Oh, okay, 1 second.
You also had a comment, right?
President Brown
Well, I
has a
think
comment.
Dr. Haig had a comment regarding, no?
And then
Okay.
Dr. Haig, if she still wants to.
Okay.
Hard to hear.
Mr. Lee, I just had a question regarding metrics. I just wanted to know, you may have covered this in a previous presentation, but I want to try to have a feel for how many families are affected by if they were on a bus and no longer get a bus. I'm just curious to know how many families. Is it 10? Is it 20? Is it 100? I'm just curious to know the number of how many families are affected. That's all.
I actually
Thanks.
do not have the information right now
Okay.
with me. Yeah, but I can get back to you.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. No problem at all.
Yeah.
Thanks for your presentation.
I just wanted to, with 2 things. So just in response to what actually Mr. Fields and Dr. McGarry are saying, that, and I'm 100% on board with reducing the number of buses. I mean, we all know that our kids need to be walking, right? I mean, we need, for their health, we need them walking, and for the air and the earth, we need fewer buses, and I'm all on board with that. But I also think this points to the importance of doing what we can to support that. I love the idea of creating walking trains, walking groups, things like that, because if we don't have some of those supports, it doesn't work, because the parents will just decide to drive their kids in a lot of cases. And then instead of one bus, all of a sudden we have 10 cars, and we shot ourselves in the foot. And so I just think it emphasizes the importance of that measure. I also had a question looking at the Aronimink map. So I can't, on your slide, it's too small, but, fancy computers can zoom in, and it looks like there are crossing guards that are not on the walking routes, and I was just wondering about that.
Are you talking about the state and Vermont?
Yeah, I'm actually having trouble finding it at the moment. There's a couple of them. Yes, a township line, and what is that, Vermont? Township line in Vermont. Woodland and I don't know what. There's two on Township Line that are not on a walking route, and there's one on Woodland Ave that's not on a walking route.
Yeah, we will make sure that everything is correctly reflected on the map before we put it on the map,
Great.
on the website.
Great.
And I'm not positive, but looking at that intersection there, they may actually be our crossing guards servicing other community schools. St.
Right.
Dots is right on the corner
Right.
there, so
Right.
we're not showing walking paths for the St. Dots students.
Sure.
These are the walking paths to Aronimink. So those 2 specifically on the northern side of the map are likely for
St. Dots.
St. Dots.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, we also have several crossing guards in Westbrook Park area that we are placing those crossing guards to support other students that's going to Catholic schools as well.
St. Eugene's probably. Or something.
Probably.
I wanted to, one more point too, with reducing the buses and those things, that the longtime community members that are listening to this meeting, we all have to keep in mind that the traffic situation in this area has increased tremendously. There's just so much more traffic than there was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It's a real, Upper Darby is kind of a place that people are driving through to get someplace else. And I'm not saying as a slight, they're trying to avoid traffic in other areas. And so these efforts are a step to address that, but that does mean we will need to have buy-in from the other entities in the area, like the township and the state, to support, and the community to support the efforts we're taking here to have more kids walking to school than on the bus. And I wanted to go to public comment for this section because the public comments are only about this particular topic, and then we can go into the next agenda item. So, Aranda, if you want to go into the public comments.
Certainly. Our first comment is from LaFay Williams, located at 16 North Kirkland Avenue in Upper Darby. The comment was received on the 24th via voicemail. The comment begins, for the past 12 years, I've been living in the Highland Park, Beverly Hills Middle School catchment area. My son attended BH and received bus services for all 3 years, leading me to assume we were eligible for the bus. In 2019, my daughter entered 6th grade, and she too rode the bus. Yesterday, I learned that I was never eligible for the bus because I live 1.3 miles away from BH, and the UDSD requirement is 1.4 miles. I understand that this issue needs to be corrected at some point, but I think you are going about it in an insensitive way. Decisions cannot be made solely on data and numbers. Students are not just a number. They are human beings attached to these numbers. It is not my daughter's fault that she was incorrectly assigned to a bus. It is also not her fault that the boundary system is flawed and she was assigned to BH, which is 1.3 miles away, when DH is not even a mile away from our house. The bus that she was previously allowed to ride will still be coming to my neighborhood to pick up students a few blocks away. The same bus will ride past my daughter while she is walking to school. To me, that is very demoralizing. Please finish what you have started, but allow my daughter and other students in this position to continue to ride the bus. Safety should be a priority. Please consider grandfathering in those who have already been riding the bus as you fix the boundaries. End of comment. I do know that Dr. McGarry did respond to this parent and have a conversation with this parent.
Yes, I had a good conversation with this parent today. I know that there are concerns, and this parent is strongly advocating for her child, and I totally understand that. And like I said, where there are opportunities to make improvements to the map or transportation, we certainly will. We're constantly trying to look at that. It just becomes this idea of splitting hairs and grandfathering. So I won't go into details with this particular parent's concerns because it's personal. But I will say that, we'll do everything that we can to try to provide those resources where possible within reason. And following tonight's comments and feedback, that's the beauty of these committee meetings, right? Is we're asking the board and the public, in the public view, to give us their feedback. And so we'll follow up on what we can and do once we get the safe routes to school ironed out. Marvin and I and Tim Leaf and Craig will sit down and talk about some of those transportation concerns, really following up on Board President Brown, your comment of the number of people impacted by some of those decisions. And we'll get you an answer, and then we'll come back to that.
Our next comment is from Anel Perez. No address was given. I will not read this comment. I will just say that there were questions that were handled by the secretary of the superintendent. And I'm not reading that comment because it does not align with board policy to provide your residence address. Our next comment is from Sahida Mayfield, located at 249 LaCara Drive in Lansdowne. This comment was received on the 24th via email. The comment begins, I want to ask a question in reference to SRTS, Safe Routes to School Initiative Update. My question is, how does the school district help students be safe walking back and forth to school? I have been in the district for more than 20 years, and my main concern was the safety of my daughters. I have 6 daughters and 4 have graduated. 2 still attend. I want to share my concerns. My oldest daughter, 33, and she was jumped walking home from school by 5 girls. My second oldest, 24, was jumped walking home from school multiple times. My third daughter, 20, was bullied and was hit in the head with a brick from a boy from her school. My fourth daughter, 19, was bullied, and she filled out a bully report, and her whole family showed up at my residence. My fifth daughter, 16, was walking home from school, and a boy tried to steal her phone. My youngest, 13, was bullied, probably the worst, and was jumped on her way home from school. Safety has been my number one concern for my daughters and all children that walk home from school. I am bringing it to the attention of the board because over the years, the situation does not seem to be getting better. I want to know what the school district plans to do to help protect school walkers. I have 2 daughters that still attend Upper Darby School District. I am concerned about their safety, and if things do not change, I will move out of the school district to another school district so my children can be safe. I am deeply concerned. End of comment.
Mr. Fields, if I can, I know I know, Mrs. Mayfield, I hope you're doing well. I hope you're watching us. I know we've had a lot of conversations over the years. I'll certainly reach out to you and have a conversation. Some of what you've put in the comment on it is alarming. We certainly want to make sure that you're safe getting to and from school. I know we've had a wonderful relationship over the years, so we'll be reaching out to you. And if need be, one of the things based on this kind of a comment, I know that I'll reach out to the township and we can coordinate a safe schools meeting and involve our local law enforcement and our first responders to bring this together. Again, this is a community effort, and whatever you experienced to and from school in the past, we certainly want to be there to make it better. And so I'll reach out to you tomorrow for an opportunity to schedule some kind of a personal meeting, or if it has to be grander and more robust than that, we'll certainly do that.
And I'll add as well, at the safety meeting yesterday, we did discuss once the product is finalized, we are going to share it with the Upper Darby Police Department so that they are well aware of where we're kind of funneling our kids to the safe routes, so that as they're throughout the neighborhoods, they're aware of those, the start and end times of schools, the walking times, and where those paths are to hopefully improve the safety, outside of the schools.
Our next comment is from Taryn, Felney, located at 267 Chestwood Road in Drexel Hill. The comment was received on the 24th via email. The comment begins, what accommodations will there be for children riding bikes to school? Helmet storage? Will there be incentive for children to wear safety gear? As a parent, I am shocked at how many children do not wear the required bike helmets. End of comment.
Yes, I think, again, Mr. Fields, I think you're the one who brought a presentation on the pathways to school and working on these initiatives. I'm excited for the future. I know you can't see it right now, but I think if we get movement and these projects start getting underway, the community is going to be in a much better place as far as boundaries being appropriate. Like the parent commented earlier, they're a little bit closer to Drexel Hill, but they go to Beverly Hills Middle School, and they could probably walk closer. More walking to school, less busing Senko students, 20 minutes outside. So we'll certainly do bike safety. One of the things we're doing, not related to just this, Chief Sawyer is going to work on helping us create a video that there are students who are virtual learning right now. And so I did an opening day speech. I met with a parent this summer whose child was at home and the house caught on fire. And so we're going to do life safety trainings with our local law enforcement and our police working together. These are the kinds of things that we're partnering in with the leadership that we have in the township and the community that we're going to do. How to get to school safely, how to handle strangers, fire in your house. Like, these are the things we're partnering with, and we're going to do with our last meeting we had with local law enforcement, EMS, and the fire. Chief Sawyer, we're going to work on doing a life safety at home for students. We'll get to know our chief of the fire department. Here's what you can do if you're at home and you're a youngster. You're making your own lunch or something happens. We are working together to do these things. So we'll certainly encourage safety for bikes, helmets, and appropriate riding to and from school. And again, let's give ourselves the opportunity to get there, and one step at a time. I know right now it's frustrating. We're certainly not trying to take away your students or your child's safety to school. We're just trying to make the best decisions we can under the circumstances.
Go ahead, Dr. Haig, and then I'll go.
Just sort of piggybacking on this parent's comment, do we at least have bike racks at every school? Yeah, okay, great. But I think the idea of something like helmet storage is also great, both because it would be nice to have a centralized place for kids to have them, but also to sort of develop this community of like, we wear helmets, this is the thing that everybody does, and that kind of thing.
Director Neal?
Thank you, Director Fields. To actually piggyback on your comment. I think it's important for us to realize that all kids won't, ride a bike. There are other modes of transportation that our youngsters prefer, for instance, skateboarding. I can't even stand on it and someone push me down, I still fall off. But, skateboard, storage, helmet, our lockers are thinner, so the helmet probably wouldn't fit in there. I think those sort of have to be taken into consideration in the future when we do encourage our students to use these other modes of transportation, that we do have the facilities to support that. And it's not just about bike racks, but it's also about, locking skateboards or those, I don't know what they're called, but it has the two small wheels and it's the scooter that spins around. They do tricks on, I'm not hip. I look hip, but I'm not that hip. So I think we have to just take in consideration those other forms of transportation too, as well, outside of bikes.
And I don't want to be Debbie Downer to anybody. Like I feel like it's like 1980 over again a little bit. Skateboards at the time were a major nightmare in schools, and actually skateboards in schools were like stopped and prohibited, and like it became a problem. So what we need to focus on is walking and biking, and let's get that. You're right. There's a lot of different modes of transportation. Some of the issues that come with like promoting skateboarding and other stuff is grinding on the concrete and grinding on the railing, and there was a lot of reasons why we pushed back on some of those things historically. And ironically, that kind of faded out, and you don't have to worry about it as much. But I'm having flashbacks of like that era when skateboards were became a problem in school campuses. I think our focus is safe walking to school, appropriate biking, which will improve the community and the pathway, and the helmet concept. I can start to wrap my head around like a place to store it, and to do that, we have to work toward reaching these goals. And to me, the first steps need to be: we looked at the safe routes. Let's get them cleaned up, and let's get them there. Let's get our facilities plan in place and get our boundaries set. And as Mr. Fields, as you brought up, let's figure out if we can work with PennDOT, the county, and the township on safe bike lanes. There are a lot of steps to get to this process that we have to get into place. We've got to get a lot of people to join in. And I think it'll make it the community such a more user-friendly piece if we can get there, as far as ADA ramps and walking, all those different pieces. We are helping pass this baton and bringing people to the table. And so I think our next step should be bringing some of these stakeholders together from these other municipalities to help make this happen.
I just wanted to say, when my kids were in Hillcrest, we never got a bus, so they were very anxious to ride their bikes to school. And one of the things we did was we used little handheld walkie-talkies. It really helped with safety. They could radio into us just to sort of let us know. But one of the other things that Hillcrest did, and I'm not sure, I know some of the other schools have done it over the years, is the lead teacher or someone, or a social worker or something like that, they had a day where they sort of like planned different walking, like, let's meet at this corner and we're going to do this safe walk to school. I think that might be a great like way to sort of kick this off. It would also help other parents and students see like who are the walkers. So that they can sort of join forces together, because, I mean, obviously there's safety in numbers. I never wanted my son especially to ride his bike to school alone. So we tried to team up with some other neighbors, but it wasn't always clear, especially when there's a bus, a block away or something like that, who were the walkers. So I think that would help, and the kids would really see the routes.
Great comments, everybody. I also wanted to say, too, along with the helmet issue, you know what gets people to wear helmets? Helmet laws. And I think this might be a scenario where instead of the law coming from the top, it comes from the bottom. As more kids are biking, as we're trying to be safer, right? And we're setting an example to other districts and other neighborhoods about alternatives to taking a bus or to using an emission vehicle to get to school, then hopefully someone will notice that. What will also help this is if we require helmets, but it'd be from the bottom up. It wouldn't be someone in Harrisburg saying, everybody should wear a helmet, it would be a community saying, hey, we want to require people to wear helmets. That's part of the steps that Dr. McGarry was talking about with figuring out the bike paths, figuring out the walking lanes, figuring out how people are getting to school, and then, as Dr. Haig said, having places for people to put their helmets and stuff. But I think it'll be one of those things that'll come from the community first and then hopefully be a standard that everybody follows. And I think now is probably a really good time to get into our next agenda topic.
So next up are the policies, which are going to require board action. At this time, I'll hand it over to Mr. Neil Desnoyers.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. So there are, just a moment. There are 5 policies, as Mr. Rogers mentioned during the overview of the agenda items. There are 5 policies up for review this evening. They are policies that have updates up for review this evening. They are policies 003 functions, 005 organization, 006 meetings, 006.1 attendance at meetings via electronic communications, and policy 903 public participation in board meetings. And the updates contained in the policies resulted from a discussion held during the July 27th Finance and Operations Board Committee meeting, where the full board engaged in a discussion of updates we would like to make to the policies that govern meetings, how the board runs its meetings. And the results of that discussion led to the changes that are now, the updates that are now incorporated that you see in the updated policies this evening. I would like to bring everyone's attention to a discrepancy that exists in policy 9, in the updates to policy 903 that are posted this evening. It was pointed out earlier today by Director Mitchell that there's a discrepancy in the updates to policy 903, public participation in board meetings, posted for tonight's meeting. The discrepancy is as follows. In the authority section that details the categories of individuals that may comment during board committee meetings, this is at the bottom of page 1 and the top of page 2, the updated policy indicates that residents, taxpayers of the school district, or school district association presidents of this district, or any district employee may provide comment. These are the 4 categories of individual that may comment on under the current or active version of policy 903 that does not include the updates. During the July 27th Finance and Operations Board Committee meeting, the board did not discuss making a change to the categories of individual that may comment during board committee meetings. However, there are several instances after the top of page 2 in policy 903 where updates were made that essentially clarify the nature of public comment. The updates should include mention that district employees may speak during board committee meetings, but do not. I apologize for this oversight in the updates. Should the board move policy 903 forward this evening, the language will be revised to clarify that in all instances, that the categories of individual that can comment at meetings include specific mention of the fact that any district employee may speak at board committee meetings. These further revisions will be made prior to policy 903 being considered for a second reading. So this was simply an oversight in making the updates to policy 903 and nothing further. And the updates are further discussed in the summary of policy updates posted to board docs. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. This concludes my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Disnoyers. And just to be sure, any comments from the board? Any comments from the public, Ms. Buford?
There are no comments from the public.
Thank you. If there are no more comments, I think it goes back.
You haven't reviewed.
Oh, sorry. Mr. Rogers, would you review the agenda?
Sure. So tonight we had our first agenda item, which was informational on Safe Routes to School initiative, which was an update. Mr. Marvin Lee provided an update on the Safe Routes to School initiative and the final result. The second agenda item were the policies just reviewed by Mr. Desnoyers, which will require board action. So the board would be taking action on policy 003, 005, 006, 006.1, and 903.
Thank you. Dr. Brown, I think now it's back to you.
Thank you. Do we want to, you have to ask if we want to move those policies forward.
Oh, sorry.
Ask the board.
Would the board like to move those policies forward?
Yes.
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 Now you can send it back.
Back to you, Director Brown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fields, Dr. Fields. A motion is in order for the adjournment of the Finance and Operations Committee meeting.
So moved.
So moved.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Meeting adjourned. Have a pleasant night and a great week, everyone.